I realized that the expertise that I was able to learn at that school would really, really benefit students in a way that not a lot of students were able to get support. And when I came back home, I started doing that in the student center that I was working in, which is like a diversity center in the College of Engineering at CU. I just started helping students navigate financially, telling them tips and strategies in a way that was less transactional than they might experience working in the financial aid office because I was working in student programming.
In a world where the recruitment of Black educators dominates headlines, one question remains. Where are the conversations with folks who are leaving education? Introducing The Exit Interview, a podcast dedicated to archiving the untold stories of Black folks who have departed from traditional education spaces. I'm Dr. Asia Lyons, and I'm embarking on a mission alongside my esteemed guests. Together, we shed light on the challenges, triumphs, and experiences of Black educators, aiming to inform and empower communities invested in understanding the crucial issue of retention in education. Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators.
Welcome back to another episode of The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. That we are live at Quince Coffee House. Yes,
I am so excited to be here. Jenna and I had a conversation day one, and Jenna said, my grandma was the first Black educator in Colorado.
Right, that's what I said. I was like, oh, really?
So this exit interview is going to be a little bit different in that Jenna is still in higher education, but I wanted to capture the story of Jenna's grandmother, capture the story of what it means to be in higher ed and stay in higher ed. And Jenna's also co-owner of Quince Coffee House. So we want to talk about like what it means to be what you're doing now when you're still working in higher ed or K-12, but still have other things that you love and want to do. So excited. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on, Jenna.
Yes, of course.
Give it up for Jenna, please. And so Jenna, I said, go ahead and write a bio and send the bio in to me so I can read it to the audience before we got started. Read the bio this morning. I'm like, if I read this bio, the podcast episode's over because I just told everybody everything. So we won't read the bio today right now, but you'll hear through the stories and questions that we ask. The story of Jenna's experiencing and all the things as far as Marie Greenwood and Quince Coffee House and all the other things. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you know anything about the podcast, I ask the same questions to every guest, and I'll start off with the first one. Tell me your journey into education. How did you know that education was for you?
Sure. This question is the one that's been the hardest for me. I've split it into like 3 specific phases of life. So childhood, I grew up with a lot of educators, a lot of public servants. So my grandma, she was the first Black tenured teacher in Denver. So she started in the 1930s at Whittier Elementary. She only taught elementary school. She wanted to only teach first graders, no one over the age of 8, because she wanted to help students get a really strong foundation. So I think that shaped a lot of my childhood and entry into education. There was a lot that I was doing as a kid related to ways in which we were celebrating and honoring her life. Because at the point that I was sort of woken up to what and all that she was, we were just doing a lot of celebrating and she was doing a lot of volunteering. So really big, small shoes to fill because she was only 5 foot tall. She was a mighty Sagittarius woman with a big personality. My most significant memory with her is just she would help me read. So after school, a couple times a week, we would go to the library and then she would read Clifford the Big Red Dog. She had the puppets, so she would do that for both of us when we were kids. We would read with her. And so just like getting that basic literacy skill started while she was doing her laundry at my parents' house growing up. So I think education, it was definitely instilled that it is important. She was one of the many educators that I was raised around. I like to say that I was raised definitely in a village, a community of Black women, Black working adults. Both my parents had to work full time and all their friends had to work full time. And so they kind of all worked together to support us children in the community to make sure that we could get the opportunities that we needed to be successful. And so I feel lucky enough that both my mom's best friends are also teachers. And they taught a lot about education to us and just the importance of doing the best that we can in our community. And so that was something that was just very matter of fact to me. Academically, I struggled a lot. I've got a lot of learning things that made it really challenging. In school, I went to Stanley British Primary School, which is a private school here. My aunt was an administrator there for years and years. And so we had the opportunity to go to private school, which was great. And also I didn't have letter grades and I called my teacher by their first name. And so I think I wasn't as aware of the ways in which my brain worked differently than other students. So it was a rude awakening when I went to high school and had letter grades and wasn't performing the best that I wanted to. I think one of the things that I definitely learned from my grandma, and she helped reinforce, is that learning happens outside of the classroom the most. And that's where the continued education will happen, is when we're teaching and learning each other, and also the importance of like extracurriculars. And so that's kind of how I survived most of my schooling, is through the stuff that I was on the side, really involved in student government, really involved in sports, really involved in just community efforts to be able to support the people around me. And I was able to make it with the people that I knew. I had a lot of help from friends and community, which is the same now.
So it's interesting that you're saying survived, right? And make it, as far as you're talking about the high school portion or the whole thing?
I would say I struggled academically like pretty significantly through college. I think I had it in my head that I was an academic person, but I just lacked a bunch of like fundamental skills. So math, reading, it was just confusing. I didn't have the support that I needed. And so it did feel like that because I felt othered for a lot of other reasons too, identity-based stuff that was going on that I was starting to figure out about myself. But yeah, it did definitely feel like a survival sort of thing, just because I didn't really like it that much. And I also felt really isolated in the experience that I was having.
I want to point out that I know that my daughter also goes to private school. And I think that a lot of folks make assumptions about if you pay for schooling, then certainly your kid's going to come out X, Y, and Z. Or if you don't pay for schooling, your kid's going to come out. And I think that as I'm talking to folks who have been on the podcast, who've taught in places like juvenile justice systems, who've taught in K-12 and public and private sector, who come through TFA, all these different ways, when it comes down to it, it is a lot of different factors that cause our students to be successful and how we define success too, right? Where some people think it has to be straight A's and that's just what success is, versus, like you're saying, extracurriculars and community is so important. So I just wanted to pause and point that out to you or to the audience. Like, that's really important because I talk about my daughter often. Many folks know that she loves sewing club at her school and is working on a quilt and sewing club. And that's bringing her joy to be able to do that after school, right? Where maybe it's on a particular day that's tough in math or language arts or whatever, that being able to be in those extracurriculars is really important. So when we talk about taking those away from our students and like, you got to go to math club because you're behind, where is the joy in the learning? So I just wanted to pause you for that, but go ahead.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, extracurriculars saved me. Sports saved me, music saved me. That was it. I had my team that I stuck with for a good portion of my youth. And then music is just something that's important in my family. I'm a drummer mostly, but also did a lot of other forms of music that just helped me be able to continue to have the joy while also getting so many messages of failure on a constant basis. Again, it was super isolating to be going through that. And then it's also confusing because I have proximity to whiteness. So because I went to private school and then I went to East, which depending on what version of East you get, like it can be a different experience. So I think that the ways in which other students were getting access to resources I just wasn't having that same experience. I didn't have the awareness that it was different for me. And so when it came to applying for college, it was just me in the basement by myself, just trying to figuring out like what exactly I was supposed to do. I mean, they ultimately only got into 2 schools, so CU and CSU. And my brother was at CU, so I decided to go there and felt pretty disappointed in myself. But I do think that when I got to higher education, that's kind of where I started to get some footing and a lot more self-confidence because I was involved in more substantial ways of engagement. So like student government, I was an orientation leader. I was super duper involved at CU. And I think that then helped me with my identity because I was studying sociology. And so I started to get some language around like social constructionism and that like as a society, we socially construct everything that we exist in all the media and how we reinforce those things interpersonally. And so I felt a lot more comfortable in my own skin. And also learned about student affairs as a profession where I could work in college, working with students similar to me as they navigate the different challenges that come with existing at a predominantly white institution.
Let me ask you a question. It's interesting because you talked about the early years with your grandmother and her supporting your reading. And then we fast forward to you going into school and filling out applications by yourself, right? And then you go into school. It sounds like you found your way to being, again, successful. What was the conversation with your family when you decided that college was for you and that you were going to pursue it, and not only pursue college, but then go into higher education as a career?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that's hard is that I had a lot of educators around my parents themselves. They're not that academically minded. Both of them have degrees in higher education. My mom has a master's degree, but she's a physical therapist, and my dad is like a business owner. And so there just wasn't a lot of concrete structure they could provide. And we weren't in a position to be able to like pay for a college counselor. I think in different parts of my life, they definitely wanted to help me, but like at a certain point, they couldn't really help with my math homework anymore. They couldn't really help with these things. And so I was kind of alone. And so it was more of like a moral support thing. But going to college was just like, period, you have to do that. And I think that that was something that I embodied, and I knew that this was what I needed to do, but it was getting from point A to point B. Starting East was like a big blow to my confidence because I got letter grades and they weren't great. And then going into college was like another like, wow, this is a rude awakening of the things that I know that I'm missing, but I just had to get through it. I have realized that like wherever I'm going to end up, I can make the best of the situation. And so because I'm not going to get the same opportunities as folks based on academics, but the realization that I had, like I just decided to make the best of it after crying on the phone during my first semester freshman year to like everyone in my family, like I can't do this, I'm not cut out for this, and then just kind of started to figure it out.
Yeah, that's real. That's so real. I think I had the same experience. I'm like, what am I doing here? I went to engineering school for 2 years. My father wanted me to be a chemical engineer. I said chemical engineer, people are like, oh, wow. And I went for that. And then that second year, I got a letter in the mail over the summer, like, about you not coming back next semester, right? And having to find my way. Like figuring it out ultimately. So you were finishing college, and I read in your bio that you did some other work before coming to CU Boulder. So tell me about that, or tell me about that work.
So I feel like that was then like the beginning of the stage that I'm in now, where I learned that higher education was a profession that you could pursue. I ended up doing AmeriCorps right after graduation. I knew that I wanted to do a term of service. And so I worked in a college access nonprofit where I learned, without a lot of training, just about some of the barriers that students face, specifically the population. I worked with students in community college in St. Paul. I think just learning how complex the system was, it was really frustrating. I felt like I wasn't able to be supportive. And so I decided to eventually pursue my master's degree in student affairs. I actually took a job at the University of Oregon after that because I was moving there, and it was between housing and financial aid, and I just picked financial aid. So it's like a similar thing. I usually have two choices, which apparently is like a psychology hack. If you give yourself two choices, then it makes it easier when you're like trying to make a decision. Okay. So I guess I've just been doing it the right way.
If it works, if it ain't broke. Yeah.
So I didn't want to live in housing because I'm a Cancer and I like my home, and so I didn't want to live in the residential house, and so I chose to work in financial aid. And it was brutal. I was like a similar, very math-focused, detail-oriented work that I just wasn't finding a lot of success in. I quickly decided to start my master's degree. So when I was in Oregon, I was mostly working full-time and then pursuing my graduate degree full-time because I didn't really want to be doing the work that I was doing. But financial aid essentially changed my life because while I hated it, like every single minute of it for the 3 years, I learned so much information that not a lot of people know, and not a lot of people like me know. I realized that the expertise that I was able to learn at that school would really, really benefit students in a way that not a lot of students were able to get support. And when I came back home, I started doing that in the student center that I was working in, which is like a diversity center in the College of Engineering at CU. I just started helping students navigate financially, telling them tips and strategies in a way that was less transactional than they might experience working in the financial aid office because I was working in student programming.
Yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why we talked about you coming on the podcast was, yes, to share your story, but also the financial aid part, right? So for so many people, they're trying to fill out the form for their child or fill out the form for themselves. And there's obviously hacks and things that we should know. And I do want to ask you that question a little bit later on about like what's some things right away, because you're still doing that work.
Yeah.
What can people take away and tell their nieces, nephews, whatever, so that especially in these times when we talk about financial aid and is it going to exist and what's happening, like how they can continue to make sure that the children that they are supporting or the teens that they are supporting are able to get a chance at college when most of us need loans. So since we're talking about it, tell us what you're doing now.
Sure. So my role right now, I'm the assistant director for scholarships and college affordability. So it's something that I created. I was able to take on the responsibilities of awarding scholarships in the College of Engineering. So that's added some big amount of, which has been good for the legitimacy of it. But where my heart is and the work that I've developed a philosophy around is college affordability advising, which is essentially to help give students tools, tips, and resources to be able to make informed decisions about paying for college. And so I work in the College of Engineering, specifically focusing on supporting that population of students. So I'll explain how different processes work. I'll help coach them if they're going to go meet with the financial aid office. I'll explain how scholarships financially works just in general. So I really try to break down the sort of the hidden curriculum that comes with higher education financially being one of them, be able to help equip them with the knowledge so they can walk into that financial aid office and know exactly what they're talking about. Because a lot of the time it is going to be more transactional and less developmental for students. And so I want to make sure that they have a grasp, like an empowered grasp understanding about how it all works. I also co-manage the Lattice First Generation Scholarship Program, which is a full ride for first-gen Colorado residents in the College of Engineering. Just a cool program to be able to work with a cohort of students because it's so heavily financial based. We work individually to make sure that their work packages are and work. They have everything that they need so they can just focus on school. And the way that we're structuring the model is kind of a brainchild in the fact that we're using the aid that they're already going to be eligible for from the state and the federal government. And we're just layering on top to fill the gap. And so we're able to give it to a lot more students because we're targeting students that are already going to get opportunities based on their eligibility criteria to be able to give them this that doesn't require like a massively large endowment to pay for a bunch of students that just feels really inaccessible.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So first things first, y'all heard engineering degree, 4 rides, right? Like, I'm not going back to engineering school. It wasn't for me, right? I failed horribly, but so you talked about, and I want to come back to this, you talked about hidden curriculum and this need to help students navigate a conversation and teach them the hidden curriculum. If you could give us 3 things or 3 tips or 3 ideas that you give your students before they go and have that conversation.
So I think I really focus on them building a strategy. I tell students that applying for scholarships doesn't end in high school. It's a continuous process. You got to treat it like a part-time job and keep doing it. There's students that I've worked with that by the time that they're graduating, they've got their full year paid for, which with how expensive education is and inflation, that's, I mean, like a car or something nice. So I tell students to continue to integrate it into their lives and treat it like a part-time job, but building their college affordability strategy, which also includes thinking about how they can reduce costs. So before they're going to look for scholarships, like what are the ways that I can think to reduce my costs as far as like, am I default into a housing situation or, you know, a more expensive housing option? And do I have health insurance that's going to be a lot more expensive? Are there things that I can do to just, you know, if it's around getting their textbooks or taking summer classes or taking some of their base level classes at like a community college. So like getting really creative about ways that they can lower the overall cost. I think it's something that I'm also saying. I tell students to prioritize applying for anything and everything within the institution first, because it's just going to be the best bang for their buck. Even if it doesn't seem like a scholarship, so looking at like alumni associations or affinity-based centers or leadership programs, stuff like that in the institution, and keeping your eyes and ears open for like stuff that could be a possibility, research, becoming a resident hall advisor, like stuff like that, getting creative because you got to look at the full. No. You good? No, you're good.
You're fine.
Are you okay?
We'll just put a little break. So while that's happening, how's everybody going? Anyway, it's Pisces season. Any Pisces in the house?
We're living in a world where our children and their lived experiences are being erased. And I think that it's really important that as parents, as folks who are taking care of children, think deeply about where we send our children to school. If you have a child who is entering kindergarten through 8th grade next year, you need to check out St. Elizabeth Episcopal School on the old Johnson & Wells campus in Denver. It's an intentionally inclusive school. They have social justice as a class starting in 4th grade mandatory. My daughter's been going there since 4th grade. She's a 6th grader now and loves it. She loves her friend groups, her after school programs. She loves that her teachers and the faculty at St. E's are diverse, and it's a great place to belong. So if you're in the Denver metro area, you're thinking about moving your child to a different school and you want something that really amplifies justice, that amplifies seeing the whole child and is a diverse school, you need to check out St. E's. Tell them Dr. Asia sent you.
All right, so we were talking about, and I definitely want to keep some of that action in the line, right? We're talking about hidden curriculum. So You said reduce your costs, so your housing costs, your health insurance costs. If you can take classes at the community college or some other ways to reduce those costs.
Yeah.
You also talked about applying for scholarships like it's your part-time job. And I love that because we do see a lot of high school students, especially around this time, try to get the scholarships,
right.
Our seniors. and they say you get this much. And I don't see too many folks in higher education saying, I'm a freshman and I just got another $30,000 scholarship. So I'm glad that you're saying that. And you said applying for money to your alumni associations, think about being a resident hall assistant, which my sister did. And that was live because she had no roommate. So I used to come up there and hang out with her all the time. She also, if you know, anybody knows my sister, she also had a giant, never mind, I'll tell that story later. My kids in the room. And then also thinking about research grants. I love that. So anything else you want to share?
No, I think that's pretty much it. When I tell students to create a strategy, I tell them to understand their true costs, actually understand how it works, prioritize institutional scholarships first, and then local scholarships next. So that's the order of operations. And I think there's just a lot of, oh my God, college is so expensive, but not actually understanding like the sticker price, but also understanding like what it's going to mean for you before making that decision. And there's also websites out there that will break down the cost for you. And so I recommend putting it on a spreadsheet so you can see like school to school and actually just make an informed decision. So not promising that you're going to get everything under the sun, but knowing that if you're intentional about it and you're strategic about it, you can make an informed decision and make one that has all the elements that you want, but it's also at the right price and has everything. But for some reason, I think that we don't really spend that much time being intentional about it. And then for students that don't know, I think, obviously it's not their fault.
Yeah, I think we had a conversation on Monday and you were saying that you all just had like a retreat to support your students, right? Mm-hmm. What's going on with their mental health and all these things. Can you see how you support students in this capacity with their wellness? What are you noticing, or what are some of the things that you're hearing from students in college that we need support on this? I'm really feeling alone on these things. Like, what are you hearing from them when they come to talk to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that it's a little bit skewed because engineers are like already so stressed. Mm-hmm. Like it's such a stressful career. I particularly love working with engineers because of how quickly it can create upward mobility. You can graduate making six figures. It's pretty common to do. And so with just a bachelor's degree. And so it just feels really meaningful. But students are scared. They are worried about family getting deported. They're worried about politics getting in their way of their ability to complete their degree programs. And also it's really, really expensive. And so students are working like 2, 3, 4 jobs to be able to make it work. And yeah, I think that there's not a lot of buy-in for like, what's the point, especially when the population of students that are in school right now, like we're in high school during the pandemic. And so I think it feels a little bit confusing as to what exactly the point is. And so I think that piece on mental health and wellness is more important than ever because there isn't a lot that they're looking forward to. And there's also a major disconnect within each other because of the ways in which they were completing the high school by themselves and at home. And so there's just like a sadness around that. Something that we focus on and prioritize in the program is mindfulness. So that's something that me and the program manager have infused and has been around the nervous system and students having language to be able to understand what's going on inside of them and to be able to tend, because they're in situations a lot where they're really, really, really dysregulated because of everything that's going on. And so we really focused on giving them tools and language around nervous system and mindfulness and being grounded in their own experience to be able to come back to, because that feels like a big part of how they're going to continue to exist and how challenging things are.
Thank you. In that same vein, typically what we talk about is, now that you've left education, what are you doing now? But you're obviously still supporting students. So I'll ask a different question and then shift the other one. What do you feel that schools, school districts, unions, higher education can do to retain Black educators? I think I've said this so many times in K-12 at least, and CDE can verify this. The Colorado Department of Education, we have less than 1,000 Black teachers in the state of Colorado. That does not count for higher ed. I don't think they count higher education, but it's scarce, right? So thinking that really we need to be focused on obviously recruitment, but retention of our Black educators. What do you feel like, seeing how you've been in your school for 8 years, you said?
Yeah.
What have you noticed as a theme? What do you think keeps people there? Is it money? Is it community? What's some ideas that you have for retention?
Yeah, so this was the other question of the 5 questions that I felt so stumped by, because I feel like I hear this question and literally my mind goes blank because I've been in so many different settings where they're asking me that question and then it's just like, can I cuss? Full of shit.
Go for it.
That it's like, I'm not bought into the way in which the institution is created that's actually going to be able to support me. I really want to just be able to get paid what I deserve. I really want to be able to have the space to be able to not be in the whiteness all the time. Like I want to be able to just have space to exist as a human. I want to be able to have balance and focus on me as a human. And I feel like that's the thing that unless these institutions drastically shift, I just don't know how it's actually feasible. And this is where I would talk about the shop. If that's a big part of where I was when I bought the coffee shop, was about to leave. I was on leave trying to figure out where I was going to go from education, just because I was feeling tired, hopeless, burnt out, and then also the compassion fatigue for the students that I was wanting to support. I just couldn't see the forest through the trees. And so the shop presented as an opportunity actually while I was on leave. Even just like being able to wash dishes felt so real and tangible. And so it was something that I didn't really know that my body needed. And as it's sort of progressed into what it is now, as an experience that's super duper liberating, but doesn't have the resources that I have, I decided that both is the balance that I wanted, at least now in this point in life where I'm still learning about business ownership. I'm still learning about community organizing this way. I'm still learning about existing outside of an institution and what that means for me and the folks that I'm working in collaboration with to create this space that is intended to be more liberating and less rooted in white supremacy and less rooted in capitalism. But that takes time to figure out what that looks like in practice. Having this as a creative outlet and like a space to hold me has helped me be able to re-engage in the institution. And I guess just going back to your question around retention, it's everything that I have just stopped. I've stopped pushing. I've stopped speaking up. I mean, obviously, when it comes to students, that's the hard line. Like I'm going to continue to advocate for students, but I have this internal check that I do every time stuff happens all the time of like, is this worth it? It's not. I mean, it's not, because I just truly don't know that the institution is shaped in a way that's going to be able to hold my full experience as a human. And so I have to protect my peace and make that conscious decision whether or not I'm going to engage, and then reinforce and fuel that energy into whatever additional thing I'm doing outside that feels more liberating and freeing for me as a human.
Say that. So I always ask that question, but I often say when I'm having that conversation with people, I don't believe that systems want to change. And I don't believe that there is a strategy to retain, but I always want to leave it up to the guest to say, like, this is what I believe. What's interesting is I think we're on episode 61. The theme across the board is never money. A lot of it is listen and then move to action, right? And that's the main thing. And if you're going to give me more responsibility, give me more money, right? But saying, I really like the way you show up for students, so here's some more responsibility, is not the badge of honor that people think it is, right? So I'm glad you were honest, right? Because many a times I'm out in community or doing different things in workshops, and folks come up who say, like, I'm an ally. I want to know what we can do. And it solely are not the university. You solely are not Cherokee School District, APS, DPS, whatever district. So I think it is hard to say what they can do. And it's interesting that you talk about basically what you just said was pick your battles. And many of us spend our time like, that's racist, such, right? And on that whack-a-mole movement of constantly trying to fix systems and comb through policies and burn ourselves up. And we go on leave or whatever the situation, and the system continues to do what it does.
Right.
And so it's hard for some folks to step back from every battle. But for the longevity of our mental health, our spiritual health, our emotional, everything, there has to be that. Dr. William Smith came on the podcast season 1. He coined racial battle fatigue, which is part of my research. And he said that. He said, pick your battles. Create a home that's centered in Black excellence. Get out into nature, eat well. And if you gotta leave, get the hell on, right? And people don't wanna hear number 5. They're like, I'm gonna keep fighting the good fight. And I'm like, bro, I'll see you on the other side, right? No. Thank you for sharing that. So
I guess just one thing that I do, that when I was thinking about this question, I had a list of things, but also like my white counterparts that are touting themselves as allies, like also learn how to be an accomplice, also learn how to actually build relationship in a way that we can drop our ego and want to actually learn about our experiences.
Yeah.
Because I do think that while they're not the institution, they are the people that we're working with every single day. And there's some white allies that want to support us. And I think that a big part of that, and then also I feel like the greater position that we're in society right now is relationship building and like getting beyond the pseudo connection and superficial interactions to actually being able to connect as on a human level and hear what that experience is and honor and hold that person as a full human. And so I think that I do feel like for folks that are trying to be an allyship, really learning how to be an accomplice and really learning how to build relationship that is sustaining and generative, I think is important.
Yeah, I agree. What I struggle with is the what can I do as if books don't exist.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yes,
like the same TED Talk that I watched, the same training that I was in, that Stacy did in this district, like the same things. I'm not doing anything magical that you can't find out. Right. We're past white fragility being like the only book that people understand. And so when people ask that, like, what can I do? You know what you can do.
Right.
Like, stop wasting time.
Right.
Yeah. So you talked about Quince being this place. And I heard people with the washing dishes like, yes. I feel like every educator has like that fuck it job where it's like, mine is thrift store, putting things back on the hanger and hanging it up. That's it. Like when I was in the depths of teaching 6th grade and figuring it all out, it was that or reshelling books at the library. I didn't want to think, I just wanted to just put my headphones on and push a cart or put things back on the hanger. Everybody knows the thrift store's toy section is always a mess, right? I just wanted to do that, right? But you found Quince.
I did.
I need you to talk about how it came to be, the vibe in this place. This is my second home.
Yes.
Zoe has what she knows, her famous order, a ham and cheese croissant and a Leo drink. Yes. Right, with whipped cream.
With the whipped cream.
With the whipped cream, right? Hurry up, right? So like, why Quince? Obviously, everybody can't own a coffee shop, but why is this for you?
Yeah, I mean, so the opportunity really just serendipitously happened. So Catherine Hilperin, who is one of the Black educators that I'll definitely call out, she bought this coffee shop and sent me casual texts like, hey, I bought this shop, because she left the university. So we met at CU Boulder doing diversity work together, scholarships and diversity work together. But she left the university and decided to buy a coffee shop. And she's like, it's 5 minutes from your house, which
this is so Kate.
Yeah. And so I just started coming, and there was something about this place. And I was like, I don't know anything about business, and I would love to help you with this. So let's do it. And so we really decided to take what we learned from being in diversity spaces in higher education and have infused that into this space. So it was like, we don't have a lot of affinity-based spaces for adults once you get past the educational experience. And so we just wanted this place to exist and an extension of the love and support that we want to give out to people, and be a space that can feel affirming and liberating and supportive and restorative and connective as much as possible. And it's hard, but I think the thing that both of us are realizing is that working in education sets you up to be able to do a lot of different things.
How so?
Just because of the number of different things that you have to balance as an educator. I mean, you're just already equipped to like think on your feet, move fast, think strategically, do a lot with very little resources.
Right.
And then also connect with people. Obviously, I think teachers are like the model, if they can be the model for connecting with humans. And so I think that people like the fact that we're authentic humans that are genuinely checking in with how they're doing. Feels really good when they're walking in the door. And so, yeah, it's just opened my brain in a way I didn't know it could. And it's very complimentary to being able to work in education, because I don't know what my journey in education will be after this, but it's just so embedded in me to like be in education, supporting my community, supporting my city, whatever that looks like going forward. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I feel like when I come to Quince, it very much reminds me of the folks who had that classroom, right? Or the counselor's office that had the lamps and the thing, all the bubbler was going, and right?
Yeah.
And it feels like, can I hang out with you, miss? I want to be here all day. Go to class, right? And then you've created this so beautifully for the community. And I absolutely love it here. I know quite a few people like, I didn't know this place existed. And I was introduced.
Probably because we don't have a sign.
Yeah. You're right. But now you have fans, right? Shout out to Miguel Lovato over at Donnell K, who introduced us. And this is 5 minutes from Zoe's school. So I've been able to hang out here many, many a times. And so much so things like this, small businesses, consulting, coffee shops are what I feel like for a lot of people, they feel like they can control, right? Like I can't control systems. I can't be, but I know that I can come in here and I can turn the lights on and I can make coffee for people and I can.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. I can be in community in these ways where it's just us, and you can have a flag for Palestine up and not have like, well, I don't know if I should have that in there because what if they could, right? We could just kind of be, and in such a beautiful way. Right. And the community really, I feel like it's shown up in these really great ways for Quince. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the energy is definitely flowing. And I think even like within the context of business, like the way in which we're trying to organize ourselves in a whole human, again, like non-capitalist way, I think is a continued learning. But I just really feel like the importance of being able to be in a relationship and have that be generative and create things. I think that there could be a whole line of, former educators that own like coffee shops and laundromats. And there's just something to that I think that it provides creativity. It's connection to community. It is just a very tangible way. And I just feel like to have more business owners that are former educators, I think would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels like that's where it's going. The question I always ask folks is, what are you doing now? And quite a few people, some folks are still in the youth serving organizations like a Girls Inc. or YMCA, but quite a few folks, specifically Black women, are like, nah, I'm doing consulting. I'm selling feed pics. I'm not. Right? Like, feed pics. Put them, right? Because we're not. Because if you think. Okay, I see you. I'm just saying. But there is this like, I can't go back. And especially because if you think about it, no matter what industry, if you look across the board at jobs that people, like for myself, I look across the themes, I'm like, oh, it's not me.
Yeah.
Right? And so then we have to figure out like, okay, if it's not me, and if I go and apply somewhere else, I know it's going to happen either month 1 or month 17 or month 2.
Right.
Then it's like this, okay, let me get real about what I need to do to take care of myself. Right? Next question. So you talk about being former family educators. Shout out to Marie Greenwood. Are there Black educators that you would like to shout out on the show?
Yeah, so Marie L. Greenwood, first Black tenured teacher in Denver. There's a school named after her in Montbello, Marie Greenwood Elementary. So she's obviously icon status. I have a lot, So my cousins, Morgan and Lisa. My aunt was an admin, Ida, Kate. She's an amazing educator. Juanita and Victoria, my mom's two best friends. I think that they were all very inspiring, just very matter of fact that education is it and going to do our best for our city, for our community. And the fact that I grew up in East Denver and the fact that the coffee shop is here also feels like on purpose.
Sure. So we're going to have a Q&A with the audience, but I have one more question to ask you.
Yeah.
For you, what does it mean to be well?
Yeah. So I had mentioned before, nervous system work, somatics, mindfulness is all really, really important to me. Early 2020, I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and it totally changed my whole orientation to existing. At a certain point, your thoughts just stop. They just stop. And so it kind of put things into perspective for me. And I feel like I try to move at that pace as much as I can, where whatever's happening right now in my immediate experience is what is the most important. I try to just make adjustments throughout the day to support that experience. So wearing comfortable clothes or making sure that I'm drinking water, having a warm drink, stretching. It feels like, when there's pent up emotion in your body, it feels like plaque in your body, and taking a gentle stretch or being in good company. And I think that those ways in which I'm constantly just trying to make these adjustments to just make a little bit more space in my body so I can do what I have to do today is, I think, what being well means to me in an embodied way.
Thank you. Dr. Sean Jenright was on the show for season 5, episode 1. And I'm pointing because Stacey Taylor Brandon was my co-host on that episode. And we asked that same question. And Dr. Jenright talked about the micro diet of wellness. Just how you describe, it is the 10-day silent retreat, but it also is stretching 2 minutes here instead of pulling up in front of your home, jumping out the car and running, right? That's us. Hurry up, grab the keys. And running and jumping is chewing our food, is taking time, is drinking our water. These are all the ways that we can resist white supremacy culture and its urgency.
Totally.
Right? And he definitely outlined that. And I love that he said this micro diet of wellness because we have to be taking that every chance we get, right? I've texted and called many of folks and asked, like, what you up to today? Laying in my bed, taking my time, being with my pets, just enjoying myself, because that's what we need. We need to be taking every minute that we can.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone has a nervous system. Like literally everyone has a nervous system, which also means that we vacillate from regulation to dysregulation. And if we can start to also realize what dysregulation feels like in our body, there's a lot of power in that, because there are moments that create a flooded sensation in your body. And if you can learn how to bring yourself back, that's where that peace exists. And that's where you can come back to a state where you can make informed decisions and your brain is not in this hyper-aroused lizard mind. And so really, really getting familiar with your nervous system, I think, is power that we all can have to be able to navigate all the different moments that we have to experience.
Yeah, thank you. Before we move to questions, can we give it up for Jenna, please? We have like 2 questions if we have folks have questions about Jenna's journey.
So, Jenna, I love the story you tell about your grandmother. We know that she was educated at a time where not many Black folks were educated, especially Black women.
Yes.
So what do you pull from her as some of the legacy kind of traits that are in your DNA,
Yeah.
right? That are embedded in you, that you have used for your journey?
Yeah. So I just reread for the first time her autobiography. So I learned a lot about sports and music were really important to her. She liked to be outside. And so honestly, the ways in which she presented her gender was like really affirming to me, that she was very unapologetic about the fact that she wanted to do stuff that the boys would do. One thing that was interesting, so they wouldn't not let her graduate from East High School, but at a certain point, she was at the top 10 percentage of her class at East. And the guidance counselor pulled her to the office and said, "What are your plans?" But then they saw that she had Negro written on her form. And they're like, "Oh, well, you're wasting your time anyway. You're going to be cleaning people's houses. So don't even bother. We're not even going to have this conversation." And she decided that she wanted to take her education into her own hands, and she transferred to West High School, which honestly goes to show you that while schools were integrated, how they were living it out, like depended from school to school. And so West High School, my guess was they were just a lot more evolved in how they were doing the integration process, whereas at East, students could only go to school. They couldn't do extracurricular activities, and they weren't going to encourage them or help them get into college. And so she transferred to West her sophomore year and had a much better experience. But she just showed those examples of, this is mine, I'm going to do it. Like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And then she ended up going to what's now UNC, Colorado Teachers College. And then, she just dealt with it. I think my grandma just had a very detached orientation to life. And so, again, I talk about how she's a Sagittarius. It's like, this is her party. We're just here as guests. So
it's like my grandmother.
Yeah. So I think that the amount of exuberance that she had when she told stories about such like mundane things like playing a sports game or like playing in the mud, or what she said, prejudice in her book a lot, prejudice that she was experiencing. I think she just had like a good, spacious, detached way of things, which I think helped her in her resilience and attaining her education and getting to where she was, because she was kind of having fun along the way.
So thank you.
Yeah.
You have spoken brilliantly to the many iterations of you. What would you tell your younger self?
Man, wow.
Joy just came to hear this.
I know.
Crispy.
I would say the most challenging part of my experience growing up was just isolation. I felt different for so many reasons. And I think I feel really, really happy and affirmed in my Blackness because I was raised by Black women. There's a term in teaching that I learned that's the warm demander. And I feel like Black women just embody that so much that it's like, I'm going to hold high expectations for you, but I'm going to hold you so gently. And so I truly owe everything to the Black woman that raised me, that I feel so loved and important. And also there's just stuff around my gender expression and my sexuality that I just needed additional language to be able to figure out. And so I had a lot of time where I just felt really, really alone. Again, like my proximity to whiteness, like I had a lot of friends, but also they didn't look like me. And so I think I would just tell my younger self that you're gonna have community that can see you and hold you in your full self. And your definition of success is not measured by anything around you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, folks, this concludes our episode of the Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. One more time for Jenna, please. I need you all to come back and support the coffee shop.
please.
I need you to get a to-go drink, get something. Make sure that you're supporting them. You tell people about Quince. They're doing great things here. We want to make sure that we drive by and it's going to be here, right? So enjoy yourself. Thank you all for coming, and tune in. This episode will drop on our podcast on Spotify early April. So if you're signed up for the newsletter, you'll see that it'll drop in April. If you follow me, those of us who know I live on LinkedIn, it's on LinkedIn. I'll put that out on LinkedIn. I'll put that out in Instagram, but make sure to follow the newsletter. And so, yeah, that's it. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. If today's conversation resonated with you, know that you're not alone. Through Lyons Educational Consulting, we work to support Black educators in navigating racial battle fatigue, reclaiming their wellness, and building community-centered solutions that sustain us in and beyond the classroom. If you're looking for workshops, wellness cohorts, or strategic support for retaining Black educators, let's connect. Visit LyonsEducationalConsulting.com or follow me on LinkedIn, Dr. Asia Lyons, or Instagram, Hello Dr. Asia, to learn more. Until next time, take care and keep thriving.